Oh, geez, I did like 3 movies in a row on accident. I need to get back to doing video games that are based on movies.
Minority Report is a 2002 sci-fi movie starring Tom Cruise as John Anderton, a cop for an agency called Pre-Crime that prevents murders with the help of precogs, 3 psychics that can predict murders before they happen. One day the precogs predict that John himself is going to commit a murder of someone he doesn't know, so he goes on the run to try and prove his innocence. The movie is good. It's a fantastically well-directed movie that juggles action, mystery, suspense, and character drama, and its sci-fi setting is cool and predicted some real-world technology. It also has a script that would have ended halfway through if not for the characters being idiots. One would think that the best way to prove yourself innocent of future murder would be to hide out until after the murder's predicted time frame, not to immediately break into police headquarters and then go to exactly the scene of the crime when the crime's going to be committed!
Dumbass!
Whatever. Minority Report was a major studio film in the early 2000s, so it got a licensed video game, Minority Report Everybody Runs. It was developed by Treyarch, who made the original Spider-Man movie licensed games, including the Spider-Man game that revolutionized the franchise. They knew how to tap into the core of a property, and they're no strangers to innovation even under restrictions and deadlines. There's hope for this game not to suck. Let's see how long it takes for that hope to shatter. Yeah, it's a basic beat-em-up game. I don't need no stinking tutorials, and we'll play on the medium difficulty. You play as John Anderton, who looks nothing like Tom Cruise because they couldn't license his likeness, but he's voiced by the perpetual awesomeness of Clancy Brown, so it's not all bad.
Son, this is how I work. You will follow my damn orders and guard that damn door like a bear guarding its cave. Understood?
We start with a cold open of John and his cops heading off to stop a caterer from killing a dude. We don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to assume that Chef Ramsay finally went crazy.
If you saute scallops in a non-stick pan, they won't stick. That's why it's called fucking non-stick!
John Kool-Aid Man's through the roof, somehow not ripping his body to shreds for all the broken glass. The caterer runs away, and the game starts as a bunch of random chefs and waiters start trying to savagely beat you to death. You wouldn't think that a caterer would have fiercely loyal henchmen. The game seems like your pretty basic beat-em-up. The face buttons are used to punch, kick, block, and jump, with the right trigger equipping weapons once you find them later on. And the attacks are broken into 3-hit combos, much like Treyarch's first Spider-Man game. And much like said Spider-Man game, you seem to get just as much mileage out of sticking to 1 or 2 key combos as you do buying new moves or memorizing the whole arsenal. It doesn't take long to notice a few quirks to the combat engine. For one, every single sheet of glass and many bits of the environment just shatter to pieces when punched a single time. Either glass production really turns to cheap shit in the future, or Anderton is the reincarnation of the Fonz. Yeah, just punch out pots of boiling oil to spill all over yourself. I'm sure that's great for the human body. And secondly, the game has no problem letting you continue hitting enemies after they're knocked down, which leads to some profound abuse of the NPCs.
He keeps kicking me in the deck. Why? Why does he keep kicking me in the deck?
You'll also quickly notice that the game is a big fan of ragdoll physics, since not only do enemies go limp the second that you take them out, but John himself goes limp when certain attacks knock you down, which just feels awkward and like it costs you precious time. It really doesn't help the game's insistence that you're sticking to non-lethal means when enemies' bodies have a solid chance of folding to where they clearly have a broken neck and shattered spine. Pre-Crime is visited by FBI agent Danny Whitwer, who's come to inspect the place for any flaws in the system. You know, flaws other than being run by a dude who likes to stomp on suspects' joy departments. We never get a firm explanation in the game of what Pre-Crime is or how it works. Apparently the movie hit pop culture osmosis status within a few months. Instead, we just get shoved off to deal with another suspect, an assassin named Nikki. An assassin in a district where the cops can flawlessly predict murders before they happen.
Dumbass!
Oh, goody, you have to escort your cop friend Barry, who likes to run ahead and get shot by robots. Joy! There's a money drop in this level, and we'll cover how money works later, where you need to cross 2 really narrow pipes without falling to get the prize, which is easier said than done because the camera controls are horrible. The camera bounces off loads of terrain in the cramped-ass levels. It constantly moves on its own. Thank crap that this is pretty much the only precision platforming in the game. Nikki gets away, and we get to the inciting incident of the movie. The precogs predict that John's going to murder someone in 2 days, and now he's a fugitive and has to go on the run. And so begins pretty much the entire rest of the game. Beating the living man shit out of an endless army of identical cops to prove that you're innocent. You seriously fight the exact same enemies for the next, 6 hours. Basic melee dudes who sporadically try to stun you with sticks. Now and then you'll fight a robot, which has way too much health and hits way too hard unless you just shoot them. And now and then is a guy who drops tiny spider robots that are piss easy to kill. It seriously gets so unbearably mind-numbing fighting the same basic enemies for several hours on end. Well, on the bright side, I suppose you could pass the time by kicking cops off a bridge to fall several feet amongst a shower of broken glass! Jeez, I think John Anderton's going to be accused of a few more murders before game's end. By this point, I thought this was going to be a pretty easy review subject. Mindless button mashing, little light gunplay, fight the same enemies for a few hours, typical stuff. Yeah, level 5 is where shit hits the fan. Level 5, you have to start fighting multiple consecutive waves of enemies, and a shitload of the enemies have guns, meaning that you'll constantly bleed health with little to no good combat options against the armed enemies. You can pick up weapons of your own, a machine gun, a pulse rifle, and a shotgun, but in my experience, the game is extremely stingy with its ammo drops. You're going to do almost all your fighting hand-to-hand and only use the guns for tactical knockdowns, and even then, I ran out of ammo fast. And that's setting aside the fact the machine gun is borderline useless, since it takes about 40 shots to down a single enemy. Some dudes with guns are scripted to drop ammo. Most of them don't. So you're left with your fists trying to stop brawlers constantly in your face with stunning weapons while getting shot in the ass from across the arena. I was pretty much entirely at the game's mercy, just hoping and praying the enemies would drop enough health pickups to keep me going. But the enemy health drops are randomized, and the RNG here is a very vengeful god. I'm on level 5 out of 40, and the enemies are utterly curb stomping me. Luckily, though, I have a jetpack for this level, which, holy shit! Ow! 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 Turns out you can just fly around crashing into the enemies and take them out that way, while smashing through endless windows completely unharmed. You handle like a bull in a china shop, but the jetpack has unlimited fuel and doesn't have to recharge, and the controls are pretty smooth once you get used to them. This thing is actually fun to use. So, of course, you only get the jetpack one more time, and you never get to use it for a dedicated flying stage. The single fun and unique mechanic goes right in the trash. Too bad Treyarch didn't have any experience making giant open levels with free flight around city environments. Oh, wait!
When you stop lobbing bombs at me, we'll see about that.
Actually, I looked these games up on Wikipedia, and Minority Report only came out about 7 months after Spider-Man, meaning Treyarch was probably working on both at the same time, and you can really tell which game was the priority. I mean, Spider-Man has an entire hidden second storyline with a character that is completely different moves and traversal. Minority Report has dick kicking. Spider-Man also has a Player's Choice re-release that removed a cheat code to censor 2 lesbian kisses. Minority Report has dick kicking. Here's the deal, folks. Minority Report's big problem is that its combat system sucks. You will fight massive hordes of enemies that purposefully try to surround you. There are multiple dudes with guns firing on you at pretty much all times, and you are given virtually zero effective tools to take on the hordes. Most of your attacks are basic melee moves that go in a straight line, and enemies will take priority and preempt your attacks a lot. What little ammo the game gives you normally needs to be saved for robot encounters. It felt like the block does virtually nothing, and while you have a dodge roll by crouching and pressing jump, it doesn't really help with the sheer quantity of enemies around. You can collect money in the levels to purchase weapons and temporary boosts like armor and invincibility, but money is limited, weapons are expensive, and you can only purchase 3 of each temporary boost across the entire campaign. Why Treyarch decided to include a half-assed survival mechanic of limited cash and items, I will never know. Point is, you're screwed! And the tutorial does not give you advice on how you're meant to survive. All I learned from the tutorial is that you can throw enemies at the end of a combo, which takes so long to do that it just got killed faster. The tutorial doesn't even teach you all the game's important controls. We'll get to that in a second. If you want to survive in Minority Report, you have 3 options. 1, bump down to easy difficulty, which I'm going to try and avoid. 2, use cheat codes for invincibility and infinite ammo, which wouldn't make for a compelling review. Or 3, cheese the living hell out of the combat system. See, what the tutorial does not tell you is that you have a leg sweep and a spin kick, and both of these attacks knock enemies down for a few seconds, plus sliding into enemies does solid damage and also knocks them down. Spamming the ever-loving hell out of these moves to perpetually stun as many opponents as possible was the only chance I had of not getting obliterated. And I will give Treyarch credit here. Smoothly transitioning from basic attacks to knockdown moves, trying to gauge when it's appropriate to use certain moves, it feels like they were trying to have an interesting martial arts system with tons of combat options. They just clearly didn't have time to balance the enemies around said combat, so the game feels oppressive and unfair. Besides the fact that when I think of Minority Report, highly technical kung fu action brawler isn't exactly what comes to mind. There's also one more trick to the combat, and yet another thing that the game doesn't tell you. If an enemy's been knocked down, you can hold the block button to grab them, and then you can insta-kill them by hurling them off any ledge that you can find. Behold, the one thing that the game is known for. The game about proving yourself innocent of murder that stresses how much you're subduing your foes through non-lethal means lets you toss multitudes of cops to certain death!
Oh no!
You know, call me crazy, but I'm starting to think that turning a license about not killing people into a brawler might have been a bad idea. On your way out of pre-crime, you fight one of Whitwer's minions as a boss, and he just automatically dodges all of my attacks while I'm left mashing buttons hoping to get lucky.
How in the heck am I possibly gonna beat this guy?
Oh yeah! I can shoot him! The guns have like 0 weight or impact since they're all supposed to be stunning weapons and all non-lethal. As if that ship hasn't sailed already! You go to the mall for some reason, and the first mall level glitched to where there were non-stop loud crunching noises pissing me off while I tried to figure out where to go! Oh no, I'm hearing sounds of violence. Maybe that's why John is driven to kill. We find out that the future uses retinal scanners for targeted ads. John knows a guy who runs a club that does something. You're supposed to remember him from a minor role in the movie, except we aren't even following the movie. And then John's just home now. We spent 4 straight filler levels dicking around the mall for nothing! The game's levels are really short, with several clocking in at only a few minutes long, and I kind of think they did that to get out of programming checkpoints. Because there are no checkpoints. Ever. Even in longer stages with several brutal fights in succession, or the sewer levels where dying means doing the painfully tedious crawling around shit water over and over again. John gets back to his apartment where Barry sends him the data on his case. One of the precogs doesn't have a report on his future murder, which is unusual, so John decides to visit Precrime's creator outside the city. But first you have 4 levels escaping John's apartment while fighting more endless hordes of Precrime officers. One level you're told to get to the security office, only the office doesn't open. Not until after you've defeated so many Precrime goons that I thought they were rigged to spawn infinitely. Okay, that's it. I need to make some street pizza. Yeah, now that we're fighting enemies on a high-rise apartment complex, throwing enemies off ledges means that they plummet several stories to a certain pancaking against the pavement. And if you think this is just a funny quirk that you aren't meant to do any of this, listen. I didn't add that scream. That was programmed in on purpose. Treyarch intentionally coded enemies screaming in terror as they plummet to their dooms in a game about Minority Report, a license about avoiding murder. And at the top of John's apartment complex, you run into Whitwer again.
You don't understand, Whitwer. I'm not gonna kill anyone.
Starting now! You know, in my defense, Boyle ate my lunch that one time, and Reynolds was always dropping flashbangs in my face. He had it coming. In the second and final actual cool part of the game, you fight a police hovercraft as a boss, using weapons picked up from the enemies. You get a cluster missile gun and a grenade launcher for this fight, but trust me, neither is that helpful outside of this one boss. The cluster missile fires 5 projectiles at a single target and somehow seems to miss all of them, and the grenade launcher is fairly certain to blow yourself up. So it's kind of a good thing that you almost never see either of these weapons ever again. And then we cut to this guy who yells at the assassin lady from earlier about how much he wants John Anderton dead. This makes even less sense if you remember that movie that they want you to have watched, because premeditated murders are sensed by the precogs days in advance, meaning either we already know the assassin fails, or this guy should be rotting in prison as we speak. You trek through some sewers, kind of just out of nowhere, and I'm sure it's a total coincidence that these levels look like the sewer levels from Spider-Man. At the end, you have to disable some pumps and fight militant sewer engineers. Alright, who's got the balls and who wants to lose them? The sewers actually give you a bunch of ammo, because the next several levels are packed with robots upon which to expend said ammo. Ammunition carries over between levels, and I forgot to check whether free playing a prior stage lets you resupply for the campaign. The best weapon in the game by a mile is the shotgun, which can tag multiple enemies at once, and at close range is either a one-shot kill or damned close to it. So of course the weapon you find most often is probably the machine gun that barely does anything. John tracks down the creator of Pre-Crime, and she explains that the 3 precogs don't always see the same future. One will sometimes see a suspect as innocent and create a minority report. Pre-Crime ignores the minority and arrests suspects anyway, meaning there's a solid chance that they lock away innocent people.
I've arrested innocent people. And the people I put away with alternate futures? My God, if the country knew.
Oh, darn. Now you might have to actually investigate your suspects to make sure they're guilty. You know, like real detectives. And funny enough, asking cops to actually do their jobs in order to address the flaws in pre-crime system is an option that neither the movie nor the game ever so much as mentions. Whatever, the game at least patches one major plot hole in the movie. John can't hide from pre-crime because he never lost them in the first place. Cue 4 more levels fighting these same officers through this woman's house. For the love of shit. And then you get the jetpack for 2 more levels of flying through the same sewer stages like a brief obstacle course / maze, one of which is on a time limit. And then you never see the jetpack again. Because Lord knows, we wouldn't want something interesting to happen. John needs to break into pre-crime to get his minority report. I assume that his inside man Marty can't just do it himself because he lacks main character powers. But first, John needs to spontaneously teleport to a shady hotel to swap out his eyes to fool the retinal scanners. Then we have a sequence pulled from the movie where the hotel is flooded with spider robots that can scan everyone's eyes looking for John. In the movie, the eye swap worked and John gets away undetected. In the video game, guess those new eyeballs didn't do shit! You fight through the hotel, you get to the streets, and you fight Whitwer's agent that looks like Oddjob. This dude only takes damage when he feels like it. You can blast him in the face with a gun, and then he'll do a dodge after you shot him, like he just decided afterward that he didn't take a hit. Fight more pre-crime in the slums, fight more pre-crime in a subway, play the same map from earlier to break into pre-crime. How is the entire state not out of cops by this point? John grabs the female precog, who's got way bigger jugs here than she does in the movie, and he has another mission for Barry.
Now tell me about Roy Verhagen.
Sure thing, Mr. Anderton. Who the fuck is Verhagen?
Yeah, John just yanks the name of the main villain completely out of his ass without anyone having ever said the name to him, because Verhagen is the man the precog said that John would kill. I didn't know that because they only tell you the name once over an intercom in mid-level where it's almost guaranteed to be drowned out!
Suspect name John Anderton. His name Roy Verhagen.
This game was so friggin' rushed. I mean, holy shit! Verhagen runs the nation's biggest robotics company, and he's got some criminal connections. This is a massive change from the movie, where Anderton had a missing child and his victim was set up to look responsible for the abduction, which led to a conspiracy plot from within pre-crime itself. The game is probably closer to the original Philip K. Dick story, where the victim was a military general, except the general in the original story wanted pre-crime shut down to fuel the military-industrial complex. Verhagen's motive is dumber. Now you're back at the mall, because guy from the movie who's never explained has tech to grab footage from a person's brain. So they repeat the mall maps, and then the hell level begins. You have to stop pre-crime from breaking through the club's doors. So this is an escort mission, and you have to fight waves and waves and waves of enemies. Half are brawlers who blitzkrieg the doors, and the other half constantly savage you with guns. And that doesn't sound out of the ordinary for this game, except by this point in the campaign, the game starts to cheat. Enemies started dodging the vast majority of the attacks that I threw, meaning that combat takes even longer. Now the combat hinges ever more on pure luck, and you take more hits as you button mash trying to get something to land. And yes, this level has ammo. Good luck abandoning your escort mission to go grab it. You basically have to sit in place getting the shit kicked out of you by enemies that just refuse to take damage. The only way I managed to beat this level was to buy invincibility power-ups from the market, which again, you can only do 3 times across the entire campaign. And even then, I only cleared this by the skin of my teeth. My refusal to bump down to easy difficulty is really starting to bite me in the ass. And then the club guy doesn't even pull the Minority Report, the one thing that we explicitly came here for. Instead, he just tells you everything about Verhagen that we already knew from talking to Barry. Apparently, Verhagen is tied to organized crime, which, I'm sorry, how is organized crime a thing when the cops predict all murders before they happen? The club guy gives you an informant who can tell you how to get to Verhagen, and you know exactly what I need to vent my frustration from that escort mission? To huck several cops out of a moving subway train so they can grind and splatter into hamburger meat against the racing wall. Again, John Anderton is totally innocent of murder. Really, I swear. This is the point where the game completely gives up. It starts dumping hordes of about a dozen enemies onto you at once. You have to replay multiple levels in the slums and subway, including going back through the crappy hotel room for literally no reason, and I still can't find any damn ammo for my guns. They just copy-paste multiple levels to drag this thing out, and when you finally find the informant, he wants his laptop back. Guess how you get it? Run for about 2 minutes to end the stage because the game gives not one solitary shit whether you actually fight any of the enemies. And this isn't even the only level where you can do that. Oh, he got away. What do you mean, man? He's right there. After him. Nope, our jurisdiction ends at this one doorway. We can't keep chasing him. Oh, that is such bullshit, man. Let me through. Look, that guy's been stomping our officer's nutsacks for 2 days. Do you want a piece of that?
The balls are inert.
Team Broken Penis on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Broken penis!
On second thought, I'm good. You also have to fight Kung Fu Agent again.
Why do losers always want a rematch? Here, I'll give you a little help.
Oh, you have got to be kidding me. John wants to prove that he fights better than Kung Fu Agent, so you're not allowed to use guns so that John can whip out his dick! And of course, the boss just dodges all your hits like he's got Ultra Instinct. So how in the hell do you defeat him? Bounce him like a basketball! By pure luck, I found out there's at least one combo that he never blocks, punch, punch, grab, which has John slam the guy into the ground so hard that he bounces 10 to 12 feet into the air. Friggin' Batman couldn't pull that one off. How in the hell is this guy still alive? Oh, and for all the game's protestations that you have to win a fair fight, the dude calls in pre-crime backup no less than 6 times. And you can't use the guns on them either. Not that it matters, the game is so miserly with its ammo that I couldn't have shot them anyway. You break into Sol Robotics via some brief where the hell do I go levels, you get lots of ammo to shoot up the robots, and you run into Verhagen. He wants John dead because he wants to install a new corrupt police commissioner, which is baffling since John isn't the commissioner of the damn police! And why does he need a corrupt commissioner? He already runs the biggest company in the world, and the cops had no proof or intention to act on his criminal ties until he enacted this scheme! And hold on, something's not right here. Verhagen made John want to kill him by ruining his life by sticking pre-crime on him, but pre-crime was only after John because he wanted to kill Verhagen, but John only wanted to kill Verhagen because pre-crime was after him, but pre-crime was only after him because he wanted to kill Verhagen, but he only wanted to kill Verhagen because pre-crime was after him, but pre-crime was only after him because he wanted to kill Verhagen, but he only wanted to kill Verhagen because pre-crime...
You've created a time paradox. Ah, Jameson. I see you finally decided to fulfill our contract.
Oh yeah! That's freaking brilliant! Send an assassin to murder a police officer in a city where the police can predict all the murders! Brilliant! This story doesn't fit the world of Minority Report at all! They just wrote a generic take on The Fugitive, added sci-fi guns, and let you hug the cops off of buildings! The final boss is Nikki, the assassin from way back at the start of the game, and not only does she also dodge all of your hits, but she punches you in the dick when you go to attack her! Were the devs just bored when they coded that in? Or is that just the law when there's one single female enemy in the entire game? The best way I found to beat her is to slide into her to trigger a dodging animation, and then pump a shotgun into her face while she's in mid-animation so the game can't cheat her out of the way. Also, you should really buy both ammunition extensions in the black market before this fight, because it's not like you need the money for the rest of that crappy market anyway. And when John wins, he just throws Nikki down a Phantom Menace pit for no reason!
That was for my dick.
Whitwer shows up to tell John that he's been cleared of wrongdoing despite— oh, holy crap! Nikki survived that fall! I guess this world's physics work differently from the real world. That means that all those cops totally survived their catastrophic falls. Isn't that right? Oh, right. On my way down here, I threw a couple cops into vats of industrial chemicals and what appears to be hot lava. But Whitwer says I'm cleared, so they didn't die. They just probably wish they had. Verhagen gets arrested and the game ends with literally zero hint that pre-crime ever gets reformed from arresting innocent people. And several of the game's developers modeled themselves as prisoners of pre-crime. No doubt arrested for blighting the world with this game. Minority Report Everybody Runs was a decent idea executed badly. They basically took the film's first 2 acts, cut out all the character work, added nothing except for a different villain, and tried to stretch it out to a lengthy brawler title, and none of that worked. The additions to the story make absolutely zero sense, and the story itself is just kinda crap. The combat is decent in concept, giving the player a wide range of moves and trying to adapt to enemy tactics, but the system is so half-baked and unbalanced that it leaves the game a frustrating slog. And yes, there's the dissonance of having a character trying to clear his name of murder, committing dozens of flagrant murders, which kind of brings me to my final thesis. I think Treyarch were going for the wrong genre altogether. Minority Report is not a movie or license that's built for a martial arts brawler game. This probably should have been a platforming game, running from the cops across tricky sci-fi terrain, sometimes with a jetpack. Maybe something like Shadows of the Empire's Foot Levels, for an example. Or maybe even turn it into a stealth game, since the entire game is about avoiding the cops. But it already feels like the game was really rushed, and platformers probably take more nuance and design work than just kicking 5 guys in the balls for 6 hours. So, what can you do?